Using the wrong sensitivity can be the difference between dropping high kill games or getting destroyed. And you can't just copy someone else's sensitivity because everyone has different devices, hand sizes, friction level, and has different playstyles. So now I'm sharing with you precisely how to find your sensitivity, which will allow you to get more kills and dominate the competition. Now before we get into the sensitivity, you have to know that there's one aiming skill that separates the great players from everyone else and allows you to get the critical first shots in a gunfight, which makes you more likely to kill your opponent. And this aiming skill is your centering or your crosshair placement. If you watch any good player play, they have complete control over their crosshair and they move it back and forth between areas of the map where they think an enemy will appear. This is more difficult because you don't get aim assist when there aren't enemies around, so you need to have complete control over your crosshair without any aim assist. And that's why I use my centering to find my horizontal and vertical sensitivity. First, I load into a Verdansk and go to a place that's pretty isolated. I stand about 10 to 15 meters away from a wall with 2 targets next one to another, and I bounce my crosshair back and forth between each target. Now, my speed isn't that important. What I'm looking at is how accurate I am and if I'm overshooting or undershooting the targets. I'm adjusting my sensitivity until I get something that feels right, and I'm giving myself about a minute or so at each sensitivity while bumping it up or down based on how accurate I am. The general rule of thumb is you want to play at the highest sensitivity you can without sacrifice to aiming control or consistency. Typically, the higher sensitivity, the more difficult it is to control. Now, I repeat this step in the vertical direction. I just find 2 targets that are stacked one on top of another, and then I repeat what I was doing before. But personally, I like to keep my multiplier vertically on 1, which is the exact same as your horizontal, so it's very consistent. Now, after I find a sensitivity that feels good, I put my back to the wall and then I practice doing 180-degree turns and centering to one of the targets. There's going to be a lot of times in Warzones where I'm getting shot in the back and I have to turn around really quickly, so I want a sensitivity that's fast enough to do that. And just to be clear, I never expect to have perfect accuracy when I'm doing these tests. I'm just looking for the max sensitivity that I can use, where my aim doesn't completely fall apart and start to go wild. So this is pretty subjective, but if I can be within a couple meters of each target most of the time, then I feel pretty good about the sensitivity. After spending about 5-10 minutes doing these tests, I then go on to something I call follow the teammate. I load into a multiplayer game and I just follow my teammates around while trying to keep my crosshair centered at their chest. This is a great drill for practicing your centering because it helps you visualize the player models as they move around the map, but it also is good for dialing in the right sensitivity. And this step really gives me a good idea on how much control I have over my crosshair, because when I'm tracking a moving target without aim assist, it's pretty hard. Now, once I found a comfortable sensitivity, I move on to finding my ADS multiplier. This is the coefficient that slows down or speeds up your sensitivity when you're ADS'd on an opponent. Now, it's a little bit trickier to find, but what I like to do is similar to the last step. I just follow my teammates around and I try to track them just like before while ADS'd. And just like before, I adjust the multiplier until my aim feels comfortable and consistent. But in a normal situation, you're going to have aim assist on your opponent, so just keep that in mind because this is going to be pretty hard in comparison. Now, to find your zoom multipliers, you're going to have a gun without a scope and one with the zoom multiplier that you're targeting, and hop into a multiplayer game. Then move your zoomed weapon left, right, up, down, and adjust it until it matches the field as closely as your horizontal and vertical aim sensitivity. So this way, whatever scope you have, it feels consistent all around the board, and just repeat that for each zoom multiplier. Now, after I've done all these testings, I like to get into a lot of gunfights in a multiplayer game to make sure my sensitivity and settings feel right. Now, ideally, I like to test them out at close and long ranges to get the best of both worlds and be prepared for any scenario that I find myself in. Now, ideally, it's good to do this process one more time the next time you hop on, because your aim, just like any other skill, can vary from day to day. So if you do it a second day, you can get a really good feel for what feels right on a sensitivity. Now, one of the hardest parts, which I really highly recommend, is locking in these sensitivities once you found them. You really got to just trust that the testing you did its job, and you just got to move on and practice the game. Do not adjust it so much. That's going to make it really hard for you to get comfortable with your sensitivities. So you just got to huck it out until you're comfortable. Because at the end of the day, the perfect settings don't actually exist. If you're a great player, you can really just succeed on any sensitivity. Like my Warzone sensitivity is totally different than my Call of Duty mobile sensitivity, and I've adjusted pretty fast. Now, once you find a comfortable sensitivity, you just need to spend the time aim training and developing those fine motor skills in your hand for better accuracy, consistency, and if you switch too much early on, it makes it so much harder to develop that hand-eye coordination and good muscle memory. The good news news is, once you took time to master in your aim at one sensitivity, it's pretty easy to adjust it down the road by different increments and still be successful because you can adapt quicker since you have that muscle memory built in already. So don't stress out too much about what you're starting at now. Just pick something that's comfortable and consistent. Subscribe!